using levels to improve the contrast of an image in Adobe Photoshop Elements version 10. Go to the File menu, click on Open and select the file you wish to edit. Now this image is lacking contrast. Although it's lacking contrast, there is a tonal range in there. Nothing is too dark or too bleached out. If that's the case, sometimes you can't revive the image if it is lacking detail. Now we'll go up to the Enhance menu, we'll go to Adjust Lighting and select Levels. Now the Levels palette will open. If it's obscuring your image, you can move it to the left or the right, or move it out of the way so you can actually see the image in the background. That's important because it will preview what it's doing in the background as we alter our levels. Now the Levels panel has a histogram. Where it says Input Levels, you'll have a histogram on there. Now the slider on the far left represents shadow detail. That's the black slider. The shadow in the center, the grey slider, that represents midtones, and the slider on the far right, that represents highlights. Now because this image is lacking in shadow detail, the histogram is sitting in between the highlights and the midtones. Now what we can do is stretch that histogram out and have it going from the shadows all the way across to the highlights. How we do that is we go to the shadow detail slider and we click drag and we bring it in to the beginning of the histogram there. Then we go to the right and bring that in a little bit. Now the last thing we need to do is tweak the midtones. Either take that to the left or to the right. Usually contrast is a matter of personal choice, so I'll just slightly bring it until it improves. Now more or less with most images that are okay and are slightly lacking in contrast, more or less the only thing you probably need to do is to tweak the midtones or possibly the highlights or shadow details slightly. Once you're happy with the contrast, click OK. Just going to have a quick look at what Photoshop Elements has done. We'll go to the Enhance menu and we'll go down to Adjust Lighting and bring up our Levels panel again. Now you'll see, whereas before our histogram was a solid black, there was no gaps in it as we have here. Although before the histogram only sat between the highlights and the midtones, and now it goes right across from the highlights all the way to the shadow detail. We've stretched it all out. It has an appearance that the contrast has improved. But what we have done is we've reduced the tonal range, and that's why there's gaps in between on here on the histogram. To bear in mind is when you're digitally enhancing any image, especially to a great extent as we have done here, it will lose quality overall.